So, you've signed up to play the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV that has a free trial up to level 60 and includes the first expansion Heavensward, but you're not sure what it's all about. What's up everyone, Soldier First Class here, and today's mission, I've created a beginner's guide to Final Fantasy XIV. With the recent wave of new players coming to the game from all backgrounds and levels of experience in the MMO genre, I wanted to take time to welcome new players to the game by giving them some advice from a veteran player. Final Fantasy XIV and MMOs in general can be intimidating, but also really rewarding as there's so much to see and do. I also want you to think of Final Fantasy XIV as an RPG first and an MMO second, as opposed to most MMOs. MMOs are not typically considered to be some of the most story-driven games, but this is what sets Final Fantasy XIV apart from the rest of the genre. This is due to it having a full-blown RPG narrative, complete with loads of backstory and lore, with a main story that's highly regarded as one of the best in not only its own franchise, but also in gaming in general. I don't want to hype up the game and set lofty expectations, but trust me when I say that getting through a Realm Reborn and getting into the expansions is well worth it in the end. You also need to know that this game is one giant love letter to the entire Final Fantasy franchise. You'll see boss fights, characters, references, and even locations that will remind you of every game in the series. These aren't just straight rip-offs of the past though, as the writers have found a way to take concepts and lore from previous entries and make it unique to Final Fantasy XIV. This makes it a wonderful experience in its own right, but also a trip down memory lane that will leave you remembering the rich legacy of the franchise. With that in mind, you're about to find out why over 22 million people have experienced this game over the past 10 years. Before we get started, if you have any questions or want to see different aspects of how the game works, ask away in the comments section, or you can catch me live on stream. I stream Final Fantasy XIV on the days and times on the screen, and you can follow me at twitch.tv/soldier_firstclass, or click on the link in the description below to check out the channel. Now let's get started. You've started up the game and now you're ready to create your character and set off on your first adventure, but how exactly does it work? First off, you might be wondering how the data center and server system works, or why this even matters. If you want to play with friends, you'll need to join the same data center as them. These are situated depending on your region, with the current three being North America, Europe, and Asia. Each data center has its own set of worlds, which becomes your central hub for your time in the game. Don't worry if you select a different world from your friends, as long as they're on the same data center, you can still play with them. To select your data center, there's an option on the main menu that allows you to see the data centers for each region and shows you the worlds on that data center. Choose your data center here and confirm. To select your worlds, you'll start the game in the character creator screen, where an option to select your world is on the top right of the screen. You can then create your character and begin your adventure. Keep in mind that due to server congestion, it might take a little bit to officially create your character, as the server could be handling heavy traffic at the moment. As a side note, if you want to play as the Hrothgar or Viera races, you'll need the Shadowbringers expansion. These two races are not available on the free trial. When it comes to creating your character, this is all just personal choice. Nothing you choose here will affect anything but your appearance, and aside from a few roleplay elements, this doesn't have any in-game effects on the story. So create the image of your innermost expression and take your first steps into Eorzea. When you create your character, you'll also select your starting class, which determines your starting city, Ul'dah, Gridania, or Limsa Lominsa. No matter where you start, these classes have their own quest line, complete with class-related rewards, lore, and quests that unlock your class's abilities. Once you reach level 30 with your class, you'll prestige into your main job. For example, if you choose to be a Lancer, you'll begin in Gridania, where you'll need to complete the Lancer quest at the Lancers Guild. Once you reach level 30 and have all the quests completed at that level, you'll prestige into the Dragoon job. This applies to all classes aside from a few jobs that have zero class requirements, such as Dark Knight or Samurai. However, these special jobs such as Dark Knight can't be reached until your current job has reached the minimum level requirements to begin those quests, but isn't restricted to a specific job. This next piece of advice is one that is more of a personal choice. A lot of people want to start the game but aren't sure which class and job is for them. While this is sometimes trial and error, I find that going with a class or job you think sounds cool and trying it out is the best way to find your starting class. The beauty of 14 is that your starting class doesn't have to be your main, as you can switch it pretty much any time. In fact, one character can learn every single job in the game all the way to the level cap of 80. All you need to do is find the guild that has the base class you want to try, and it's as simple as accepting the starting quest. While we're on the topic of jobs, I want to do a quick summary of Final Fantasy XIV's combat system. The combat system is based on a series of attacks that are placed on timed cooldowns. Global cooldowns, or GCDs, are your standard attack abilities and only on cooldown for a few seconds. Off-global cooldowns, or OGCDs, are your other abilities such as the Dragoon's Battle Litany ability. This ability has a cooldown timer of 180 seconds, which is why it's not a GCD. OGCDs have a wide range of cooldowns, but the key component is that they're not the same length as your standard abilities. For effective damage, your GCDs and OGCDs are supposed to be used in an efficient combo known as a rotation. So for example, the Dragoon uses True Thrust, then when the cooldown timer runs out, the next attack is Vorpal Thrust or Disembowel. Then depending on what you chose for step 2 of your combo, the Dragoon will either use Full Thrust or Chaos Thrust. You can see what moves are combo moves when you use an ability, and the next ability in the combo is broken lines rotating around it. It's also listed on your skills themselves. I also highly recommend reading your skills and learning what they actually do. As a side note, to check the length of your cooldown for your abilities, this is the recast timer you see on your skills. When in a dungeon, raid, or trial, you'll likely hear the term mechanics a lot. These are the various attacks that the enemies will try to launch at you and are best avoided by healers and DPS. There are attacks that you can't dodge, but don't worry, this is no fault of your own. These are natural attacks that damage the entire party. You'll also notice orange area of effect or AoE attacks. These damage a certain location on the field and only do damage if you get caught in them. There's also stack markers, which you'll need to group up with your party members to avoid taking full damage when you see them. And then if you see an eye-shaped graphic on the screen, that means you need to turn your character away from the enemy with the graphic above them. There are several mechanics in this game that you'll need to learn, and each enemy has its own set of attack patterns. Learning these attack patterns is key to taking down even the most difficult bosses. Don't get discouraged though, mechanics can be extremely tough, and even veteran players die to some of the mechanics. What new players need to keep in mind is that your class also determines your party role and abilities. The roles are tank, healer, and DPS, or damage per second. Tanks are typically the leaders of the party and control the pace. They're the damage takers of the party and focus on abilities that increase their defense and draw aggression or aggro from the boss or mobs in dungeons. You may also hear the word enmity when reading skills or talking with certain players. This is what I'm referring to when I say the word aggro. Each tank has an ability which causes them to take priority on aggro, which is referred to as tank stance. A symbol or icon will tell you when tank stance is on or off. A good technique to learn early on for tanks is to turn tank stance on in the beginning of a dungeon or trial, and then face the boss towards the back of the arena. I'll use Efreet here as an example of what to do. Turn on tank stance, then run directly through the middle of the boss's hitbox, and the boss should follow you through. This opens up DPS for their abilities that make use of positionals such as rear and flank. It's also good practice to keep the boss as center on the platform as possible. Tank jobs include Dark Knight, Gunbreaker, Marauder, which upgrades to Warrior, and Gladiator, which upgrades to Paladin. Healers are pretty self-explanatory, but they're also capable of offensive abilities that deal damage, and that's something that some players need to be aware of. They focus on buffing the party, healing the party, and helping the tank survive encounters. Healer classes include Astrologian, Conjurer, which upgrades to White Mage, and Arcanist, which upgrades to Scholar. Sage is a new job being introduced in the Endwalker expansion. DPS, or damage per second, are jobs that are the heavy-hitting damage dealers. DPS focus on doing damage to the enemy, can sometimes provide offensive buffs to the party, and focus on heavy-hitting combos and abilities. DPS is also broken down into 3 categories: physical ranged, magic ranged, and melee. Physical ranged DPS classes include Archer, which upgrades to Bard, Machinist, and Dancer. Magic range DPS include Thaumaturge, which upgrades to the popular Black Mage, Arcanist, which also upgrades to Summoner, and Red Mage. There's a special limited job called Blue Mage, but this isn't practical for normal job use. Then there's melee DPS, and this is my personal favorite. These include Pugilist, which upgrades to Monk, Lancer, which upgrades to the popular Dragoon, Rogue, which upgrades to Ninja, and then finally, another popular job, Samurai. Reaper will be the new melee DPS job being introduced in the Endwalker expansion. DPS jobs have a feature called Positionals. This is based on the skill that's being used and will feature bonuses based on your position to the enemy. In the example here, I'm playing Dragoon, and my attack Chaos Thrust features a rear positional bonus. If the attack is done from the rear positional, it gains a boost in potency, or the term for the ability's power. Another attack of the Dragoon is the Fang and Claw, which features a flank positional bonus. To enable this bonus, you must be on the left or right side of the enemy's hitbox. In most cases, if you're to the rear of the boss, the back of the hitbox will be empty. Solid lines on the left and right indicate the flank, and a solid line with a large arrow indicates the front. If the hitbox is a complete circle, it means that these attacks are at full strength regardless of where the attack comes from. Now that we've discussed the jobs, their roles in combat, and a little bit about strategy with each one, let's briefly go over how they work together. When inside of a dungeon, raid, or trial, tanks will handle the pulling of enemies, and it's up to the other players to support the tank. If you're playing DPS or healer, don't try to pull mobs or the boss, because you can end up getting the entire party killed. Tanks are designed to soak damage and be the distraction for the party. Selecting your job is one of the most important aspects of the game and can dramatically increase your enjoyment of it. As a side note, if you want to brush up on what your role is actually meant to do, there's a set of events called the Hall of the Novice, which will teach you the fundamentals of your role. These will help you learn skills that are key to becoming a better overall player. When jumping into Final Fantasy XIV, there's a lot of things to do, places to see, and characters to talk to. However, there are plenty of distractions that can drag out playtime, and in the early stages of A Realm Reborn, cause some player fatigue. My recommendation for new players is that when you begin playing, focus on two things, the main storyline and your job-related quests. I highly recommend ignoring the quests marked with these icons here, as they're pointless side quests that are sometimes heavy time sinks with almost non-existent rewards. Instead, you want to focus on quests with the Final Fantasy XIV Meteor logo, which are your main scenario quests. There are side quests, however, that do have pretty good rewards, including mounts, glamour items, and other pieces of loot. These are marked with blue quest markers with plus signs. These typically unlock dungeons, trials, or raids, and carry with them more rewarding results for your time. These are also the quest markers that signify your class and job quests, and are required for your class to upgrade to its related job. Jobs without prerequisite class requirements, like Dark Knight and Samurai, will also feature these markers. However, I still recommend that you wait until at least A Realm Reborn is complete to start doing these blue side quests, except for the job and mount related quests we mentioned earlier. Now, I want to get into the biggest question that most people have when they start playing this game, and that's about the multiplayer aspects of the game. Is playing with other people required? The answer to this is yes. The beauty of the game is that you can still treat 90% of it as a single player Final Fantasy game with very little interaction with other players other than the game's dungeons, trials, and raids. Don't worry if you don't have any friends that play the game, because Final Fantasy XIV has a system called Duty Finder, which queues you up to play with people also looking to do that specific duty. This saves you from having to find people, as the game does it for you. Now, I know a lot of people have social anxiety, and playing with other people isn't the most appealing aspect of the game. Some even wonder if you have to talk to other players at all. The answer to this is no. You're not required to communicate with other players. It does make things easier and sometimes lead to learning new things or even making new friends, so I do highly recommend it. As a general rule of thumb, I recommend letting the people you're running with know that you're new. This is easily done by typing in the chat window and just saying, "Hey, I'm new to the game, trying to learn," or something like that. A lot of 14 players will slow down and help new players go at a pace that is more comfortable for them as they learn the ins and outs of the game. Even as a veteran player, if I'm playing a job or role that I'm unfamiliar with, I still let my party know that I'm testing out something new. I've learned a lot just from that aspect of communication. Speaking of playing with others, I want to explain how the party system in the game works. There are two types of party, light and full. A light party is a team of 4 players, 1 tank, 2 DPS, and 1 healer, which are typically found in dungeons. A full party is a team of 8 players, either 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS, or 1 tank, 2 healers, and 5 DPS depending on the content. Full parties are typically found in raids, alliance raids, or trials. Dungeons are typically found in the main story and are for 4-man parties. 8-man raids are a series of 12 boss fights and feature a full-length questline based on a theme. Trials are single boss fight encounters that are 4 to 8 players, takes place in an arena, and are typically part of the main story. 24-man raids are a series of 3 dungeons that include several boss fights and are made up of 3 8-man parties. Each of these typically has their own story, separate from the main story. However, the Crystal Tower raid series is required and will lock part of the Shadowbringers expansion unless completed. So you've completed a dungeon and you notice that there's chests waiting for you at the end. You or someone in the party opens it and you see that there's a few items with the options Need, Greed, and Pass. Need is used for items that are for the class you're currently playing. For example, if you're playing as a gladiator and an item drops it's for a gladiator, you would then choose Need. Need takes priority on the rolls. Greed is for when you're trying to obtain gear for a class that you're not currently playing, but takes less priority than a Need roll. Pass is for when you don't want the gear at all and choose to let it go. It's proper etiquette to pass on the stuff you don't want and click either Need or Greed on the other stuff. If you plan to stay for the loot, it's good manners to choose one of the 3 options on all the loot so that the winner can be selected quickly. The winner of the loot will be determined by RNG when either all members of the party have rolled on what they want or if everyone leaves the duty. So you've chosen your data center, created your character, and taken your first steps into Eorzea. However, you notice there's multiple things on your screen and you may be asking what all this means. Let's do a quick breakdown of all the things you might be seeing. Let's start off with the bottom right corner where you'll find the central hub for all your options. This goes from character to system settings and is where you can change anything to suit your needs. For example, if you wish to change your heads-up display, there are several options for customization to help clean up your screen. Let's go ahead and change a few things around to give you an idea of what that looks like. By selecting HUD layout in the system menu, you can add hotbars, remove UI elements, and move almost everything around to your preferred location on screen. This will help to make the screen much more enjoyable and easier to see the action. When it comes to visibility, there's one major tip I can give, and that's to turn off other players' screen effects. At first, it can be really cool to see all the different animations, but unfortunately, this causes visibility to be an issue when dealing with enemies. To fix this, go into System Settings, Character Configuration, Control Settings, Character tab, and then find Battle Effects Settings. You can either set these to show limited or show none. I run my settings at show limited so that I can still see some effects but not be blinded by them. This is especially helpful in boss fights where getting hit by an attack you didn't see can mean instant death. Now let's talk about control schemes. Final Fantasy XIV is great in the aspect that it can be played with a controller or mouse and keyboard. I highly recommend a keyboard and 12-button MMO mouse, but some of the best players in the world are on controller, so it's honestly just personal preference. Keep in mind the PS4 and PS5 are capable of plugging in a mouse and keyboard, and this is my preferred platform to play the game on. As a side note, I also highly recommend that you change one specific setting, and that's going from normal controls to legacy mode. This makes movement much faster and makes escaping enemy attacks much easier. You can find this in the system settings, character configuration, control settings, and then it's the first option under the general tab. Players using controller will have this option already on by default. Next, let's discuss the hotbars. The hotbars are located at the bottom of your screen and either feature 12 boxes with commands in them or are shaped like a controller's button layout. These are used for your abilities and will fill up more as you unlock new skills and options. Starting out, you'll only have a few abilities, so most of the spots will be empty. You can also customize where these abilities go so that your combat is tailored to your personal needs. For example, let's say I want my sprint ability to be assigned to my 2 key on my hotbar. All I have to do is click and hold on my sprint ability and drag it over. If you're worried you might accidentally move an ability in the middle of combat, you can click the little lock button on the side of the hotbar and it won't allow you to move your abilities anymore. To move them again, just click the little lock again and it will unlock the hotbar. On the right side of the screen, you'll see your duty menu, which tells you all of your active quests and if you're registered for a dungeon, trial, or raid. This gives information such as objectives, average wait time for the queue, and how many of each role has signed up for that duty so far. The duty tracker will be extremely helpful in tracking how much of a quest you have completed or give you hints to the next objective. If you click the text below the quest name, it will show you the direct location of that objective on the map. In the top right corner of the screen is your mini-map, and this can help in multiple ways. It has a compass on it which tells you which direction you're headed at all times. It also has a cone of vision which tells you which direction your character is facing. You also have your server information, time setting, and connection tracker just above the mini-map. In the top left corner is your main story tracker, which when selected will show you the next main story quest and where to find it. You'll also see certain side quests located in small text just underneath this bar and helps with tracking those as well. The bottom left of the screen is reserved for your chat window, which is pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I'd go over it just a bit. This is where you can type messages to your party, free company members, or even other players out in the world. Be kind and courteous because hate speech and other forms of harassment can result in account banning. Also, just don't be a dick. Now that I've discussed my main points of the video, there are some frequently asked questions that I'd like to answer. These include how to level, armor and weapons, the Materia system, crafting and gathering, and some of the game's extremely fun distractions. Let's start with leveling. A lot of new players might be looking for ways to level, although with the way 14 is set up now, leveling isn't as much of a grind as it used to be. In an effort to get new players caught up to current content, the experience given by the main story has been boosted so that hitting level caps on quests is less frequent. Focusing on the main story will level up your main job well ahead of the level cap for the MSQ. However, you still want to level alternative classes at some point, and you'll want to focus on a few things. These include special dungeons such as Palace of the Dead, the leveling roulettes, class-specific hunt logs, and much more. There's a few experience buffs as well, and these are worth taking advantage of. If you log out of the game, you'll want to do it in locations that are considered sanctuaries. The chat window will tell you when you've entered a sanctuary, but if you can fast travel to it, it's likely a sanctuary location. This gives you a well-rested bonus to your experience gauge, which, depending on how long you're logged out for, determines how long the boost lasts. Then there's the job level experience buff. When you level up a job, all the other classes and jobs that are not up to the first job's level will receive a 100% increase in experience gained up to level 70. So for example, if you level up Samurai to 80, all jobs that are lower level than Samurai will receive an experience boost. This makes leveling alternate jobs much faster. At level 16, you unlock the ability to do leveling roulettes. These are daily duties that allow you to gain 1 level's worth of experience up to a certain level per day. The more you get through content in the game, the more roulettes you'll unlock, and the more daily experience you can gain. Palace of the Dead is one of the game's deep dungeons, and this can be a decent way to level up a new job or just test out a job you're unfamiliar with and want to learn a little bit more about. You can access Palace of the Dead after completing the main story quest, Into a Copper Hell. This will unlock the side quest The House That Death Built that once completed unlocks Palace of the Dead. You can get this quest from Nojiro at the airship landing in Gridania. Once you've unlocked the palace, travel to Quarry Mill in the South Shroud and you'll find an NPC known as the Wood Whaler Expeditionary Captain to start Palace of the Dead. You can either bring friends with you, take on the challenge solo, or queue up for random party members. Experience works differently in Palace of the Dead, but it does provide really good experience for your job outside of it. It consists of several floors that come in a set of 10. You fight your way through like a normal dungeon, pick up items that only work in the palace, and fight several different enemies along the way. Reach the 10th floor of that set and you'll be faced with a boss fight. Complete the boss fight and you move on to the next set of 10 floors. This continues on for 200 floors. The hunting logs are another great way to earn experience and are basically done just by playing the game. If you go into your log segment in the bottom right corner, you'll see the different logs in the game. The hunting log features enemies that your specific class has on its list. Defeat a certain number of each entry in the hunting log and you'll earn a large sum of experience. Complete the entire page and you'll receive an even bigger boost. Complete the entire log for a massive amount of experience. You'll see this symbol above an enemy's head if they're in your hunting log, and these can even be found by running certain dungeons. So we've talked about some of the leveling strategies in the game, but now we need to discuss your gear. You have 6 pieces of gear on each side of your character menu with 1 weapon. On the left side you have your head, body, hands, waist, legs, and feet. On the right side is a shield if you're playing Paladin, ears, neck, wrist, and right and left rings. Below the rings is where your job crystal is equipped. Once you reach level 30 in a class and complete the required class quest, you'll earn your job stone, which when equipped will take on the job associated with the stone. So how do we obtain new gear? This is a really long question to answer, so I'll keep it brief since starting out there are really only a few ways you can obtain it. Most of your level appropriate gear will come from the main story quest or your job quest. Every 10 levels, your job quest will give you a set of armor known as artifact armor. This is usually the best armor you have available to you at certain points in the game. You can also obtain gear sets from dungeons, but this isn't extremely efficient since you'll have to pray to the RNG gods that you'll actually win the gear. This can cause you to run the same dungeon several times and isn't really worth it, to be honest. While we're on the topic of gear, I want to talk about the Materia system, and this is something you'll recognize if you ever played Final Fantasy VII. However, Materia works differently than it does in 7. It doesn't feature spells or abilities, but does feature stat boosts. This part of the game used to be really relevant at all stages of content, however, it's really only useful in the late game when you're doing high-level raids. This is because you level up and get new gear fast, and bonuses you get from Materia really aren't that great until late game anyway. You could put Materia in a weapon and then 2 levels later, it's obsolete. So while it's a cool concept, if you're a beginner, I really wouldn't worry about it till you've completed Shadowbringers. If you are interested in Materia, you unlock it as part of the main story quest, Life, Materia, and Everything. Once completed, you'll be able to visit the Materia melder vendors in several locations and attach Materia to your gear and weapon. Crafters can also meld Materia after reaching a certain level. Now let's talk about the real endgame of Final Fantasy XIV, and that's the Glamour system. You've gained a few armor sets now, completed a few dungeons, and you're getting stronger. However, you've found this amazing set of armor, but the stats don't quite match up with your current level. In steps the Glamour system. Using Glamour prisms that you'll obtain in various places, you can keep that weapon or armor set that you absolutely can't part with, but you still get to keep the stats from your higher gear. You can unlock the ability to Glamour at level 15 by completing the side quest If I Had a Glamour. This quest is located in Vesper Bay and is given by the NPC Swergime. Once completed, you'll be given Glamour prisms and the Glamour option will be unlocked in your character menu. Now all you have to do is open up the menu on the armor piece you have equipped, select the Glamour option, then scroll until you find the armor whose appearance you want. Now you get to keep the stats of the better armor, but you're visibly wearing the armor of your choice. This process will only work if you have Glamour prisms, which you can buy on the market board, earn from quests, and other methods throughout the game. You can also create templates of Glamour called Glamour Plates that you can equip in any major city with an Etherite like Gridania, Ul'dah, or Limsa Lominsa. If you go to the Adventurers Guild in any of the starting cities, you'll find an NPC that offers you a room in the inn. Go to a room and you'll find a Glamour dresser. Here you can place items that you want to keep for Glamour and place them in a template. Once on the template, you can swap Glamour Plates quickly as long as you're either in a room at the inn or at the Etherite in a major city. Just open up your character menu, hit the Glamour Plate button at the top, select the tab of the Glamour you want, and there you go. Speaking of Glamour, you've most likely seen character screenshots and people showing off their favorite outfits, weapons, or even their different mounts. This is done in a photo mode called Group Pose, or G-Pose for short. This is entered by typing \G-Pose in the chat window. Much like other photo modes, you can add filters, zoom in and out, get different angles, change the lighting, and much more. Mess around with it a little bit and you'll be showing off that amazing glamour you worked so hard to get. There's one piece of advice I can give you that will make travel much quicker. While playing the game, you'll notice that each major city has a large crystal and several small ones throughout the city. This is called the Etherite System and is basically the fast travel system of Final Fantasy XIV. Every major location has an Etherite attached to it, except for Vesper Bay, which actually has a lore-based reason for not having one. You'll want to attune to these Etherites as soon as possible, and attune to the small ones in cities like Ul'dah. This will allow you to not only travel to other major locations quickly, but also move quickly throughout the cities. Want to head for the Lancers Guild, but don't want to walk all the way across Gridania to get there? Use the Etherite System to travel there instantly. It's in your best interest to attune to these as soon as you come across them. They're also marked on your map and are recognized as crystals. There's a few things about Etherites you'll need to know as well. They do cost gil to travel, but the game gives you so much this will rarely be an issue. You can also register an Etherite as your home Etherite, and if killed out in the field, you return to whatever Etherite you have marked as home. You can also use them to travel to other worlds on your data center. We've discussed some of the social elements of the game, but one of the major parts of the social atmosphere of Final Fantasy XIV is the free company system. You can either create or join a free company in the game, and this can lead to having groups of friends to play the game with. I personally run my own free company on Primal Excalibur called the Ranks of Soldier, and we're always looking for new members. We help people learn the ins and outs of the game, including raiding, boss fights and mechanics, and much more. Unfortunately, joining a free company on the free trial is not currently available. Free companies feature a lot of great benefits and, if active, can make for a really enjoyable group that's like a second family. However, something to look out for is free company boosters. In the game's shout chat, which is color-coded orange, these people will send an area-wide free company invite. You might also randomly receive an invite from them to join their free company. These are people that are just attempting to boost their numbers and will completely forget you exist after you accept the invite. Find a free company that's providing actual activity, and the social elements can become extremely enjoyable. Now let's talk about the topic of crafting and gathering. This is a way for players to become self-sufficient, creating whatever they want, aside from certain gear and stuff you can only get from Savage and Ultimate raids. Crafters fall under the category of Disciples of the Hand, while Gatherers fall under the category of Disciples of the Land. The crafter jobs are Alchemist, Armorer, Blacksmith, Carpenter, Culinarian, Goldsmith, Leatherworker, and Weaver. Gathering jobs include Botanist, Fisher, and Miner. Mastering these jobs is not only fun, but also makes you less reliant on others. Final Fantasy XIV has a lot of things to collect, and this all takes up room in your inventory. Unfortunately, inventory space is limited, and you'll need a place to store your extra items and materials for safekeeping. One option is your chocobo saddlebags. These carry 70 items each and can really help clear out space while still having them right on hand. You'll unlock the saddlebags after completing the side quest My Feisty Little Chocobo, which is unlocked after reaching level 30 quests in the main story quests. There's also the option of hiring retainers. Retainers are special NPCs that you can fully customize and gear up just like your own character. You can also send them out on adventures where they'll bring back items, experience, and more. But one of the best features of retainers is their inventory space, which features 175 spaces just for items. You can also store gil, sell items directly through the retainer, or use the retainer to sell items on the game's market board system. Selling excess items can be a great way to make large amounts of gil. Hiring retainers can be done in any major city. You can hire more retainers with various methods, but starting out, you really only need a few. To hire a retainer, you must finish the main story quest Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Then go to the marketplace of any major city, and next to the market board, you'll find an NPC named Retainer Vocate. After creating and naming your retainer, you can access them by clicking on the summoning bell found in marketplaces and inns. Now let's talk about Beast Tribes. These are special quest lines that are featured in each part of the game and are the Beast Tribes you'll see in the main story quest. However, objectively speaking, the best one is the Namazu quest line, and this isn't even up for debate. Some Beast Tribes require special parameters to begin, but the rewards are extremely cool in some instances, and can result in new mounts, housing items, and loads of experience. You'll find these Beast Tribes littered throughout the game, and quests typically start after certain points in the main story quest. Want to take a break from the story for a bit, or maybe just want to check out the mini-games that Final Fantasy XIV has to offer? The game features its own version of the famous gold saucer from Final Fantasy VII. This is unlocked at level 15 after completing one of the 3 main scenario quests titled the Insert Starting City Envoy. Then there's the starting quest, It Could Happen to You, which is located in Ul'dah at the location on screen. Completing the quest given by the well-heeled youth will unlock the gold saucer, where you can play several different minigames and win amazing prizes. You can also play Triple Triad, which you'll recognize from Final Fantasy VIII and is one of the major minigames of Final Fantasy XIV. Finally, if you've done any research on Final Fantasy XIV or watched your favorite streamers, you might have noticed them riding mounts. These make travel faster and are unlocked by completing special circumstances, dropped from the game's many trials, or even gained through quest rewards. Your first mount can be unlocked once you've completed the main story quest, A Hero in the Making, and joined a Grand Company. You'll then unlock a quest from an NPC in your Grand Company called My Little Chocobo, which once completed gives you access to mounts. Once you've finished this quest and unlocked your Chocobo, you'll be able to use any mount you currently have unlocked or will unlock. Flying will be unlocked once you complete the main scenario for A Realm Reborn and will make traveling in previous areas much faster. Keep in mind, however, that in the expansions, to unlock flying, you'll need to find ether currents. These are usually unlocked by doing some blue side quest and main story quest. Unlocking flying in the expansions is typically pretty easy, so don't worry too much. They even give you a special key item that detects how far away an ether current is from your current location. I do want to fully disclose something because I know a lot of new players have either heard how bad A Realm Reborn is or how great the expansions are. The 1.0 version of the game ended up being a dumpster fire, and Yoshi P only had 2.5 to 3 years to take over and rebuild it from the ground up. That being said, it was created with the idea of being full of things to do and being able to stand on its own. This led to A Realm Reborn becoming a bit tedious in the beginning and does have some pointless quests in the main story. However, A Realm Reborn is important for two reasons. Number one, the player gets to see what the game began with, so when they see the expansions, they can realize just how far the game has truly come. Number two, there's a lot of key story elements in A Realm Reborn that are relevant to all the expansions, and you'll need this information if you want to fully dive into the amazing story the game has to offer. Thankfully, patch 5.3 of Shadowbringers removed about 20 hours of pointless content from A Realm Reborn, making it much more manageable to get into. Overall, there's a lot to Final Fantasy XIV, and while it can be intimidating for new players, keeping these things in mind will help make it less so. There's a wealth of content to explore, people to meet, and customization to enjoy, and it makes for an overall wonderful experience. Just remember that we all start somewhere, and it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. I'm still learning new things about Final Fantasy XIV every single day, and will continue to for a long time. So get out there and enjoy your adventure, and welcome to Final Fantasy XIV. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to limit break that like button. Let me know in the comments section below if you need any help with the game or just have a few questions. Subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell to join the ranks of Soldier today. And for all the latest Final Fantasy XIV news, trailers, and guides, I'm Soldier First Class, and I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.